Number 3 in the 42 ideas on leadership comes to us from Stephen Covey. And in this case, we're going to be basing it on the book that he wrote called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which he wrote in 1989, was a bestseller for many, many years, sold millions of copies all around the world, and has influenced people on what they believe leadership is, leadership on a personal basis and leading groups. So before we start, we're going to look at 3 ideas. We're going to look at 3 ideas that underpin the 7 habits. The first idea that Stephen Covey talks about is the way we see the problem is the problem. So he talks about the fact that we have a paradigm or a framework or a way we look at the world, and that it's this perception very often of the world that is the problem. He talks about the idea that a lot of the solutions that people look for when they're trying to become more effective are quick fixes and techniques that are really superficial and are based on superficial personality fixes. Whereas he talks about developing our character. And to be more effective, we have to develop our character. So this is the paradigm shift that he talks about in his book. It is moving our way of perceiving the problem. Now, the next thing that he talks about before he talks about the habits is how to create a habit. He believes that the habit is created by 3 things: your knowledge, what you want to develop and why you want to develop that habit, the skills, how to develop the habit, and a genuine desire, a want to develop that habit. These 3 things together then create the habits. And the third area that he looks at before we talk about the habits is the maturity continuum. He talks about the fact that when we're infants, we're completely dependent on others for our survival, for food, for shelter. Then we gradually move towards independence, where we become self-reliant and we're able to look after ourselves. And then comes a realization that the world is interdependent, and that it's not just in the sense of that nature is interdependent, but human relationships makes people interdependent. So first we start being dependent, then we move to independent, and finally interdependence. The 7 habits then start with being proactive at number 1, and they go all the way through to sharpening the saw, number 7. The first 3 habits are about self-mastery, this move from dependence to independence on the maturity continuum. And being proactive is about understanding the difference between your circle of influence and your circle of concern. Your circle of concern might be, I would like to have a house, I would like to have a good job, I would like to have a good family, I would like to have a good relationship with my partner. However, that's not something that necessarily we can change, the haves. We can change what we are. So I would, instead of saying I would like to have a lot of money, well, I would like to be a good worker, or I would like to be somebody who is thinking of new solutions all of the time. Instead of saying I would like to have a good family, you would say I want to be a good father or a good husband. I would like to be a good friend. I would like to be. These are all the circle of influence. And what we should be trying to do then is, when we've identified what our circle of influence is, what our circle of concern, we try to increase the size of our circle of influence. We try to be more things instead of necessarily having more things. The other area of being proactive means that we're not responsible, I suppose, for our stimuli. This means that if it rains outside, we're not responsible for the rain, but we are responsible for our response. And you can even in the word responsible, we're able to respond. We have a freedom to choose. We can get angry about the rain, or we can get an umbrella and we can walk outside protected from the rain. So being proactive means, first of all, recognizing what we can influence, and then recognizing that we do have a freedom to choose how we respond to the stimuli. Stimuli we can't change, but we can choose our response. The next habit is beginning with the end in mind. This is on the basis of 2 questions: where you want to go in life, and the second one is how you want to be remembered. The idea here is that when maybe you're at your own funeral, you imagine at your own funeral, and you're listening to what people are saying about you at your funeral. How is it, how do you want them to remember you at the funeral? And that is the type of objective you should have then in your life. By the time I die, this is the way I want people to remember me. So that is my goal in life. This is where I want to go. And from that, then you can write a personal mission statement. This personal mission statement is the type of person you would like to be. And then this is your center. The center is what you base your core on. And from your core then comes your sense of security, which is your sense of self-worth. It's your guidance, which is, from your center, then what direction you're taking in life. It is the basis of your wisdom, which is your wisdom is connected to your sense of judgment and your perception about what is right and wrong. And it's also from your center you get your power, your ability to act, your ability to overcome obstacles, and the energy that you draw in life. All of these things come from your center. You have to make sure, therefore, that your center is right. Putting first things first means recognizing that you can't do everything in life. So therefore, you have to learn how to prioritize. Now, this list of 4, we'll put it in another way that's easier to visualize. It's very important, obviously, to look after what's important and urgent. These are your first priority. To look after crises, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects. That's easy to understand. The problem arises, however, with the blue circle there, numbered the blue square, apologies, which is something that's very important, but it's not urgent. And because it's not urgent, very often we forget to do it. We forget to work on our relationship. We forget to work on our production capability activities, which would be learning new ideas and information. We forget sometimes to look after our body and our mind through recreation because it's not urgent, but it's very important. Instead of that, what we do is we look at urgent, non-important things, interruptions, emails, texts, messages in the moment, things that look like they're urgent, and I suppose they are urgent, but they're not actually important. And even worse than that, a lot of the time, instead of looking at our important, not urgent things, we look at not important, not urgent things. So we spend a lot of time maybe just reading an online newspaper instead of getting information from that newspaper that we could use. Maybe it's spending time on apps on our phone. Maybe it's just looking at one series after another series after another series on Netflix instead of spending some time with the people you love. So all of these are not important, non-urgent activities, and we have to make sure that we've put them in the right groups and that really we're focusing on 1 and 2 and not 3 and 4. This means, therefore, we have to develop time management and an ability to say no to things and to people. So the roles and goals means that we have to accept what our different roles are in our own lives. Now I'm working, now I'm a friend, now I'm the manager of a football team that I do with my friends. These are your roles. And what are your goals within those roles? And once you've recognized that, then you can start possibly to think about delegation so that other people can take on some of those priorities for you, that are the priorities that are lower down on your list. The next 3 habits that we look at are about interdependence. So we've got our independence, we've got our self-mastery, now we're thinking about interdependence, working with others. First area there is think win-win. So when we're dependent on people, we're always saying you owe me this, you have to do this, you have to give me this. When we become independent, we focus on me. I can do this, I can do that. It's your independence. However, interdependence means moving towards a recognition of us. What I do affects you and what you do affects me. So how do we all benefit from this? How do we create a win-win mentality? And now thinking win-win has 5 elements. It's about win-win relationships, win-win agreements, and of course, supportive systems and processes that promote a win-win way of thinking. In terms of character, well, to have a win-win character, you need integrity. You need to have moved along the maturity continuum towards interdependence. And this abundance mentality means that you do have a belief that we can all benefit, that it's not just win-lose, what you win, I lose, or what I win, you lose, but that we can both benefit from working together. The second thing is relationships. To have a win-win mindset and ability to make situations win-win, we need trust. So we have to work on developing trust with others. Sometimes people just directly go to the solution without having created an environment of trust first of all. And that means that we're going to be looking at transformational leadership later in the 42 ideas. This is very directly connected to this area of win-win relationships. And finally, agreements. To have win-win agreements, we need to make sure that we know what success looks like and when we want it. This is also connected to SMART goals, which we'll be looking at later. We need to know the limits of what those agreements are. We need to think about the resources that we need to create those agreements. Of course, accountability, standards of performance, so that we can say to people, this is what you have to do and you are responsible for this. And of course, the consequences of not carrying through. This is not threats, this is not promises. These are simply the consequences of not meeting your responsibilities. In terms of a supportive system that creates a win-win is that we reward people in a positive way for completing the tasks or for completing the agreements. So we need a supportive system that ensures that this win-win becomes a virtuous circle. The processes of creating a win-win situation are habits 5 and 6. Now, when we talk about seeking first to understand, then to be understood, he compares this to a doctor. A doctor, before they prescribe a solution or some kind of cure for your problem, they first diagnose and they find out what the real problem is. The danger here when we're listening to people is that we automatically come out with 4 autobiographical responses. First, we start evaluating and saying, do we agree or disagree with what the person's saying? Then we start probing from our way of looking at the world, from our frame of reference. Then we start advising them on the basis of our own experience, and we start interpreting what they're saying through the way we look at the world. Instead of actually thinking about what they're saying to us, we're already putting our own filters on what they're saying. So what we should be doing if we're going to be using emphatic listening are the following things. The basic layer of emphatic listening is where we simply mimic content. We repeat back what they have said, exactly, word for word. Rephrasing the content means we change it so that it shows that we've understood the content of what they're saying. So we don't say word for word what they're saying, but we give them back the meaning of what they're saying. Then we reflect feeling. We give them back the feeling that we've got from them. I sense that you seem to be angry about this, or that you're frustrated with this. The top level is where we combine 2 and 3. We rephrase the content and we reflect back the feeling. So what you're saying is this and this, and I get the feeling that you're frustrated about this area. That will be a combination of rephrasing content and reflecting listening, or reflecting feeling. Now, once you've understood them, then you communicate clearly back. And communicating clearly back with them is using Aristotle's 3 elements of persuasion. Ethos means, do you have credibility and trust with these people, and understanding that? Logos is logical arguments, and then pathos is using emotions. So you understand the 3 elements of these and how they combine for clear communication. Now, the last habit when we're talking about developing interdependence is synergizing. That we recognize that, yes, independently we can do some things on our own, but the habit of synergizing is recognizing that together we can actually go higher. By valuing our differences, by understanding that there are things that some other people can do that I can't, and that there are things that I can do that other people can't, that working together we can create something much more than simply the sum of the parts. The final habit is sharpening the soul. This means that we have to think about continuous improvement, continuous learning, continuous development. You don't simply arrive at a destination when it talks about being effective. This is all about the journey. This is about continuous improvement. And there are 4 areas that you have to think about. The physical area of continuous improvement is exercise, eating properly, managing your stress. The mental area of continuous improvement is reading or thinking or writing. The social and emotional would be empathy, helping others, and spiritual. The area of continuous improvement is being clear about your values, maybe meditation, maybe mindfulness, which is recognized every day as being even more important, helping to find your center through getting a break sometimes from being busy. So business is not just about being busy. It is actually about sometimes stepping back and not being busy. It's about observing, it's about thinking, it's about meditation. So when Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the soul, these are the 4 areas that he talks about. Continuous improvement in our physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual areas of our life. These are the 7 habits, and together they form the 7 habits paradigm. We're moving from dependence all the way through to interdependence. And these are the private victory there is the 1, 2, and 3 habits. The 4, 5, and 6 are the public victories, there when we're working with others, and the 7th is the continuous improvement cycle. So that is the 7 habits of highly effective people. Number 3 in our 42 ideas on leadership comes to us from Stephen Covey, and published in 1989. Looking forward to seeing you with the next idea in the 42 ideas.